Trail Fam? Welcome to Everyday Backpacker. My name is Calman, aka Ghost Mule. And fall has finally arrived here in the great state of Montana, and that means that trips are going to start winding down, although there might still be a few. But generally speaking, it's time to start doing some of those gear reviews of the great gear that I've used throughout the year. And by far, the most anticipated and most requested was the Western Mountaineering Astralite Top Quilt. So let's get started. Alright, so for those of you that don't know, Western Mountaineering is a small company based in San Jose, California. They've been around for about 50 years, and they work exclusively in down-filled sleeping bags, quilts, and some apparel. I've been using Western Mountaineering now for a few years. I own a Alpenlight 20-degree sleeping bag from them that I absolutely love. But this year I decided to make the big change over to trying out a top quilt. For those of you that don't know, a top quilt is basically a zipperless, hoodless sleeping bag. It has a closed toe box with a split up the back and several straps to mate it to the sleeping pad. Makes for a much more compact, much more lighter option, but it does have some challenges. We'll get into those here in a little bit. But overall, in a nutshell, I have to say that the Astralite Top Quilt definitely exceeded my expectations. All right, so let's get into the details. The Astralite Top Quilt is a baffled top quilt. It's rated at 26 degrees. The fill is an 850 plus fill power down. For those of you that don't know, the higher the fill power doesn't mean that it's more warm. It simply means that it takes less material to fill up the space. So you end up with a greater amount of loft, in this case 4.5 inches, and much less weight and much more compactable design. The actual sleeping bag or quilt is made out of a 12 denier shell, and then it has a 10 denier liner built in. My particular bag, because I'm 6'1", is the 6'4" version. It's also available in a 5'8" version, a little bit shorter. The 6'4" version is 19.1 ounces, and the 5'8" is 17.1 ounces. Alright, so when it's compacted into its bag, it compacts into a size about 6 inches by 10 inches using its stuff sack. Of course, you don't have to use a stuff sack. I do still use a stuff sack just to protect the investment that I made in this. But again, completely optional. Many people don't. The foot box on this is 36 inches, and the shoulder girth is listed as up to 68 inches. And I say up to 68 inches because unlike a full zipped sleeping bag with the open back design on the top quilt, you do have some room for cinching it down or extending it out a little bit. So that is actually one of the pluses that I really like about this, is this overall ability to kind of move with you. Alright, so before I go into the pluses and minuses or pros and cons of this particular bag, I do want to address something. For me, this is the first time I've ever used a top quilt. And as a new to a top quilt person, it definitely had some challenges that were unique to it. The bottom line is, if you're expecting to get a apples to apples comparison of a top quilt to a sleeping bag, there's probably going to be some things that may disappoint you or may not work well for you. Ultimately, top quilts are a really great option, may not be a great option for every single person. We'll get into that a little bit more in the cons, because honestly, I love this bag so much. All of the cons I have listed are simply things that I had to deal with in my attempts to become more comfortable using a top quilt. Alright, so as the pros go, the biggest reason why I made the decision to go with the top quilt, in this case the Astralite, was the weight and size savings. Compared to the Alpenlight that I currently own as well, it's about half the overall size when compacted, and also about half the weight. And those are two really big things when you're trying to cut down your overall weight and size of your pack. Another thing that I found really nice about this bag is it's extremely comfortable. Western Mountaineering's rating system is pretty conservative, and generally speaking, when they say that it's rated at a certain degree, it's going to be comfortable to that degree. And I found that to be true to this as well. So this bag is rated at 26 degrees. I didn't quite get down that low, but I definitely got down below freezing and was completely comfortable. We did on a couple nights wake up with frost and everything, so again I know that we were down into the cold temperature ranges. I never got cold in the bag. Even being a tosser and turner, you know, there were some issues with drafts because of the way that the thing straps to the pad, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, it kept me extremely comfortable. Another thing I really liked about the design is the strap system. So it has 3 straps, 2 large ones that go around the pad, and then 1 smaller one in the middle, which kind of draws everything up between the pad and your body. So it keeps you really well cocooned. And these are really easy to adjust even at night when you're in the bag. So you can really get a dialed in fit pretty well. It does take a little bit of getting used to putting it on inside the tent. And, you know, I'm used to being able to just toss it on top of the pad and be done with it. Not the case with this. You do have to marry them. And I don't like having my pad outside the tent. It's a weird me thing. But nonetheless, that's there. Another interesting feature about the bag is going to be this snap here. This I did like. I will rate this as a pro because, again, it really allows you to dial in the overall comfort of the bag. So for those really cold nights, I can really cinch this thing around, and then the yoke kind of drops down over my shoulders, and it does really seal me in pretty well. On warmer nights, I can unsnap it and have a lot more range of motion. And so again, just a good general variety and comfort, which is really important. When I first got it, I was a little concerned about the size of the toe box because it does seem pretty narrow. Not even an issue. Very comfortable for me. If you like to kick your legs out a little bit a little wider, this might be an issue, but generally speaking, not a problem at all. All right, so now for the cons. As I said, in my opinion, the cons that I had with this, or the negatives, really stemmed more from my inexperience with using a top quilt and some of the differences with that and a sleeping bag. So I don't know that there's really anything that I disliked about the bag, but I definitely had to do some research. First, I had to research how to put the straps on. I always honestly thought that top quilts actually went underneath the pad, and that's not true. In this case, it goes between you and the pad. Another thing is like I said, the strap system can be a little bit cumbersome to get used to, sliding it onto the pad. And if you have a small tent, it can be pretty tight as far as getting that in there and maneuvering it. And along those lines, a really big difference is going to be, sleeping in it at night. Again, extremely comfortable and extremely, able to be moved around in it. But if you do toss and turn a lot, like I do, that open back can slide a little bit. And under certain circumstances, especially if you're on a tilt or uneven surface, it can create little drafts. Nothing that was ever enough for me to be uncomfortable or, decide that it wasn't worth getting the bag. But it's definitely something that you're going to have to get used to. It's easily fixed, though, by pulling on the bag. I didn't have any issues with that. There was one night, it was particularly a rough night for me as far as trying to find a good place to sleep. And I managed to pop one of the little buckles that's on the main straps. And I had a moment of panic thinking that I had torn the strap. Fortunately, that was not the case. Even if it was the case, Western Mountaineering does have a lifetime guarantee. If you send it back into them, they will repair them for you. But again, not the case. They're very durable, even for as light of material as they are. So that was not an issue. The other thing that took a little bit of getting used to was the fact that there's no hood. So you definitely are going to have to bring something on colder temperature trips to kind of combat that. Generally, I could get away with just wearing a lightweight beanie, but I did purchase a Enlightened Equipment's hood, and this essentially is just a synthetic fill, very light denier hood that basically you just put over your head. Snap it in the front, and it actually stays with you. There's also elastic, so you can pull it over your head if you wanted to. And the reason why I like this one is it is synthetic, and there's a lot of moisture as you're breathing, so if it does get wet from that moisture, that synthetic isn't going to clump up like down would. And it's extremely lightweight. I definitely wouldn't want to leave this outside of the tent on a windy day because I'll never see it again. But this has been a really good addition, and honestly it keeps me warmer than a tent hood because it's basically attached to my head the entire time. Another thing that took a little bit of getting used to was you don't have the hood there to put your pillow in. Yes, I am a guy who uses a pillow. I use an inflatable pillow from Sea to Summit. So I had to get a little bit more creative in finding ways to keep my pillow in its place. Again, not an issue with the bag itself, just something that I had to get used to. So overall, I have to say I am extremely happy with this option. The Astralite Top Quilt met and exceeded all of my personal expectations. I definitely recommend it. So the last part I'm going to go ahead and add in here real quick is a little bit more time sensitive to if you're looking at this video when it comes out, which is in late 2021. Western Mountaineering, like every other small company, has been affected by the trickle effect of everything that happened with pandemic. Won't go into details on that or anything. However, I will say exercise a little bit of patience with them. It's going to be very difficult to find things, and I'm going to guess the Astralite is probably one of those things that's going to be really hard to find. They are focusing on just getting out as much material as they can. The store that I work at, we can't even do any special orders. That being said, if you really are interested in this quilt, I think it's going to be worth the wait. But, again, just give them a little bit of leeway in the meantime. And if you try to get a hold of them, don't expect a quick response. Again, they're a small company, about 30 people, and they're just trying to pump out as much sleeping bags as they possibly can right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. And if there's anything I forgot to cover, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day and keep hiking on.